They first noticed him in April. Not when he moved in, not when the snow melted, but on the first warm morning when the air finally smelled like wet soil instead of ice. That was when the house next door came back to life. All winter it had been dark. No lights in the windows, no smoke from the chimney, no footprints in the snow leading to the door. The mailbox overflowed with frozen envelopes, half buried in drifts. Even the real estate sign out front had collected a crust of ice. The Harris family assumed it was empty. Everyone did. Then one morning, Mrs. Harris opened the kitchen curtains and nearly dropped her coffee. The porch light was on. The snow was gone from the walkway, and a man stood in the yard staring at the thawing ground. He wasn't old, not young either, mid-30s maybe, pale skin that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in months. He wore a thin jacket despite the lingering chill, and he wasn't doing anything, just standing, watching the earth. "Did someone buy it?" Mr. Harris asked later. "There was never a sold sign," she replied. That night they saw a light in the upstairs window, the first light in that house since October. He only appeared during the day, always outside, always alone, digging small holes in different parts of the yard, carefully, methodically, never planting anything, just digging, then covering the holes back up. By May, the grass over those spots grew thicker than the rest, greener, healthier, as if something beneath it was feeding the soil. The Harris children started calling him the spring neighbor, because he hadn't existed in winter. He had simply appeared when the ground softened. One evening, Mr. Harris walked over to introduce himself. The man smiled politely. His handshake was cold, not cool from the air, cold in a way that felt wrong. "I'm renting, just for the season." "For the season?" Mr. Harris asked. The man nodded. "I don't stay past summer." That answer lingered longer than it should have. Who rents a house by the season? And why only when the ground is thawed? The next morning, Mrs. Harris saw him digging again, this time closer to the back fence. The hole was deeper, waist deep. He worked slowly, carefully placing the soil in neat piles. At one point, he paused and looked toward their window, not at her, at the house itself, as if measuring it. She stepped back from the glass. When she looked again, he was still digging. In late May, a smell drifted through the neighborhood. Not strong, not constant, just faint enough to notice when the wind shifted. Sweet, heavy, rotting. Another neighbor mentioned it in the grocery store. Probably a dead animal, someone suggested, but no one found anything. Then came the night the police arrived, not because of the smell, because of a missing person report. The true owner of the house had been reported missing by relatives out of state. Last contact, early October, right before the first snowfall. The officers knocked on the spring neighbor's door. He answered calmly, invited them inside, showed them the rental agreement. Everything appeared legitimate, signed, dated, paid in full for 6 months. But something didn't match. The rental documents were signed in November, a month after the owner had vanished. Police searched the house. Nothing unusual inside. No signs of struggle, no blood.
No hidden rooms, just a strangely cold basement, even though the furnace was running upstairs. Then they searched the yard. Ground-penetrating radar, shovels, marked sections where the soil density differed. They dug. They found nothing. No bodies, no bones, no objects, just soil, layered strangely, as if it had been disturbed repeatedly over time. The spring neighbor watched from the porch while they worked, hands folded, expression neutral, almost patient. When the police finished, they had no evidence. The rental papers were real, the bank transfers verified. Legally, he had a right to be there. But the officers returned one last time the following morning. The house was empty, furniture gone, lights off, no par in the driveway, no forwarding address. The rental period wasn't over, but he was gone. Summer passed. The grass in his yard grew impossibly lush, thicker than anywhere else on the block. It required constant mowing. And every time Mr. Harris put close to the fence line, he swore the ground felt softer there, almost hollow. When autumn returned, the house went dark again, completely, as if no one had ever lived there. Leaves collected untouched on the porch, the mailbox filled. Snow came early that year, blanketed the lawns, covered the street, erased the season. And for months there were no footprints, no lights, no digging, nothing. Until April, the first warm morning, the first thaw. Mrs. Harris opened the curtains and froze. He was back, standing in the yard, in the exact same spot as the year before, staring at the ground. The porch light glowed faintly behind him, even though no one had seen him move in, even though the house had been sealed under snow for months without a single mark of entry. This time, he began digging immediately. Not small holes, one large one, closer to the Harris fence than ever before. Deeper, slower, as if he knew exactly where to start. Mr. Harris called the police again. They came, they searched, they questioned. The same answers, the same documents, the same calm smile. But one officer noticed something odd. When they compared aerial photos from winter and spring, the yard's dimensions seemed slightly different, subtle, barely measurable, but different, as if the property line had shifted inches closer to the Harris home. That night, Mrs. Harris dreamed of soil pressing against her window, of roots sliding beneath her foundation, of something beneath the ground stretching outward, patiently. The next morning, a thin crack ran through their driveway, fresh soil visible beneath, darker than it should have been, richer, alive. Across the fence, the spring neighbor stood in his yard, holding a shovel, watching their house. Not with anger, not with curiosity, but with anticipation. Because every spring, something grows, and not everything buried stays still, and the ground always softens eventually.